Hello, welcome to another weekly update. A couple of interesting things to talk about this week, mostly to do with Teams developer stuff, but also some kind of Teams non-developer stuff, and then some non-Teams developer stuff. So, interesting. Let's start off then with a blog post that I did earlier in the week around live events. So Microsoft Teams live events are a different way of hosting meetings. They're for kind of, live events, but anything where you've got a large number of people in a sort of auditorium style setup where there's not so much interaction. It's more you've got some presenters presenting content. You've got people listening, much more like a webinar, I suppose, something like that, where you can have Q&A, but it tends to be people typing questions in that get moderated, and you just want a sort of nicer experience, a more curated experience, I suppose. So live events exists. It uses the same Microsoft Teams platform, but the setup looks slightly different. You have producer roles and speaker roles, and then attendees. Anyway, there is now support in Microsoft Graph for creating live events. So programmatically, you can create live events via the Graph API. So this is exciting because it's not something you've been able to do before. It's in beta at the moment. Basically, you shouldn't use it in production, you shouldn't use it in GA, but it does mean that developers can start playing with it and start building applications around it. There is an important security issue, though, which I outline in the blog, that if you've got any kind of policy set up about what people can do and the types of live events that they can create, but so specifically like things like the allowed audience, which you admins often want to kind of restrict and say, well, if you're going to do Teams live events, the audience should only be people inside the organization, unless you've got a particular permission set or something like that. Anyway, there's a security issue at the moment with the API in that it ignores any of the policy settings that admins put in place. I've got a bit more detail in the blog about that, but so if that sounds like a worry, then I don't know what you can do about it, really, because like the API is out, developers can call it, you don't need admin consent to use it, so it's a bit of a loophole, really, but just be aware of it if you're an admin, maybe. Tell your developers to not let users do that, perhaps. But yeah, I imagine that'll get fixed before it goes to GA, and probably fairly soon anyway. But anyway, developers, it uses the same create online meetings API call. So it's not like there's a new API call to learn or anything like that. It's just the payload slightly different. There's some additional additional attributes that you can specify to say whether or not it's a live meeting or not. And then there's some things about what the audience looks like, whether it's recording, whether you want Q&A, whether you want video on demand afterwards, all that sort of stuff. You can specify in the body of the create meeting request. So that's good. It's an important one that people have been asking for, actually, the ability to automate live events. It completely makes sense because if you're running, let's say, a conference, you might have, and lots of people are doing online conferences this year, you might have many live events that need creating. Okay, next up, so let's move away from Microsoft Teams for a moment, but sort of stay in the same sphere, if you like, for communications, and that's Azure Communication Services, which I've talked about before several times. I've done some blog posts about, announced at Ignite last year, a different way of, like a different communication platform, built on the same underlying technology as Microsoft Teams, but sort of much more aimed at developers as a kind of platform for building communication workloads into your application. Anyway, I got a chance to sit down with David Dungay of uctoday.com. So UC Today are a kind of popular kind of publication in this space, website and online presence around kind of unified communications. They're not just Microsoft, they do across the board. But I chatted with David for a bit about ACS and kind of what it can mean for you and your business. So if that sounds interesting, I put a link to their article which has the video in it, so you can go and watch that. It's kind of about 20 minutes long chat, me and David going through what ACS is, the kind of problems it solves, where I think it's going, like the things I think coming to the service, and more generally what this world looks like and what technologies like and things like ACS are going to bring to kind of what we're doing. So interesting. All right, let's shift gears yet again. So this one comes from the Microsoft Graph Mailbag. So I spoke about the Microsoft Graph Mailbag back end of last year, I think, and it was going to be a series of different kind of questions that got answered, yeah, this is one of those, and it caught my eye. There've been a few since, and I haven't sort of talked about each of them as they've come out, but this one seemed a bit interesting, so I thought I would. It's about batching up requests, but using the Power Automate custom connectors. So let me just share my screen for this because it's kind of interesting to go through the blog post. So this is from the Microsoft Graph developer blog, and yeah, so this is talking about using Power Automate but custom connectors, and talks a little bit about why you'd want to do that. So this is what I kind of wanted to link to this because this is good background information. You might be aware of custom connectors in Power Automate. You may not have actually done anything with them other than knowing that they exist. So it's good to kind of read through this backstory really of, using the built-in ones versus building your own, but then also coming in here, looking at this. So automating the process of team creation, but you can see here that what they want to do is create a team. They want to add some members and then create a channel. Makes sense. Then they talk about JSON batching, which I've talked about before, but it's a good it's a kind of nice way of batching together, grouping together related calls that you want to make in Graph, and then submitting them all in one big workload. So you can see here there's some requests. 2 requests here have been batched together, and there's a special batch URL that gets called. You do have to sort of make sure that not all of the workloads support batching. So that's a bit of a gotcha, and you can't mix and match between V1 and beta. So those are just things to be aware of, really. But yeah, you can batch these things up, and either forget. You can also mix and match gets and posts, actually. So this is a get that's being sort of done here. 3 gets for a photo, the teams that person I'm a member of, and any events. So it's a nice way of kind of grouping stuff together and then getting one response with everything in it. But then they go through taking that and making a custom connector that uses it, which is kind of interesting. And then you can put your batch thing in there, call the batch. Yeah, really nice. So you've created here a batch custom connector that you can then hook up with a Power Automate flow to get stuff done. And the end result of this, it looks like they've created 3 channels all in one go, which is nice. I think that's kind of cool. It's a nice way of doing it. It keeps the code of the Power Automate code much cleaner because you've only got to put one thing in. So if you are constantly doing the same thing, consider a batch. If you're doing it in Power Automate, consider putting it inside a custom connector. I quite like that. That's nice. Cool. Okay. Next up. So this is sort of Microsoft Teams related, but not specifically developer related. But it is kind of security and IT admin related, which is why I wanted to include it. Sorry, I'm grabbing a cup of tea. Apologies as well before I get into what this is. It's a bit late recording this one this week. Just lots of things happening. So yeah, got until now before we found the time. So that's why I've got a cup of tea with me. Anyway, Microsoft Secure Score. Let's completely change tangents again. Why am I talking about Microsoft Secure Score? Well, so let's briefly touch on what it is. So if you go to security.microsoft.com/secure score, it will give you a scoring for your tenant based on known kind of best practices and recommendations. And you can then compare that score to similar organizations by size or by industry, and you can see the kind of most recommended actions that you should take next, and it gives you kind of recommendations in the sort of order for making the biggest difference to your tenant, basically. The reason I'm talking about it here is that the Secure Score people have just added their first security recommendation for Microsoft Teams. So that's kind of interesting. If you're a Teams admin or just a general admin, then Teams is now on the radar for Secure Score. And specifically the thing that they say as an improvement action that you should do is restricting anonymous users from joining meetings. So that is a option that you can set, but it's a thing that they will call out as making a positive difference to your secure score if you choose to set it. So thought that was worth calling out. We might see more security recommendations for Teams as we go along, but this is the first one. So it's good to kind of see the security score people looking at the way Teams is being used, looking at the settings and highlighting any potential security problems. So I thought that was worth calling out. And finally, let's do something completely different, which is to have a look at something that Mary Jo Foley has kind of blogged about, which is why I know about it, which is a new event that Microsoft are, well, not a new event, sorry, an event Microsoft are running on February the 4th, which I thought was worth talking about. So let me just share my screen so you can see Mary Jo's post. So Microsoft to highlight improvements to the employee experience in the February 4th event. So this is Microsoft running an event. It sounds like they're going to announce something, maybe. So Mary Jo has said, Microsoft may be ready to unveil new Teams, workplace analytics, learning, HR, and other capabilities in the name of improving the employee experience. So that's interesting. Interesting because people in Teams, so that's Microsoft Teams, right? And maybe also some other workloads as well. So Mary Jo reckons Project Cortex and thinks it might be linked to the Teams Learning app and LinkedIn stuff. I'm trying to think back to see what else this could be. I remember something being talked about at Ignite around more kind of employee welfare and care stuff. So the wrapping up your day, the reminder to kind of take 5 minutes or 10 minutes at the end of your day in a virtual commute, like finishing off tasks, some mindfulness. There was a link or an integration with a specific company whose name I now can't remember to kind of do sort of well-being and mindfulness sessions built into Teams. So I wonder if maybe it might be that because we haven't really heard anything about that since it was talked about at Ignite. There was also some reporting sort of more being built into my analytics around, surfacing how you're using Teams and making sure that you are using it in the best way possible, but also using it in the way that is mentally for you the best way possible, but also manager support for kind of overviewing a team and making sure that they're collaborating well together. So I wonder if it might be some of that stuff. What I should do actually is try and find the blog posts that I talk through this stuff, which is not a good thing to do kind of live whilst recording. And if I thought about it until like slightly before I started recording, I kind of I would have found it beforehand, but never mind. It's hard to know what to search for really. I knew I did a blog post around the Ignite time frame and it was kind of employee health, so let's see if I can't find it, but if not, never mind. I can't see it. What I'll do is here we go. Is this it? Let's have a look. It's doing Bing searches. Okay, yeah, I think it's this. Right, so let's Microsoft Teams will bring you insights to managers and leaders. This is for managers, so you can see the employee experience, you can see best practices for coaching and development, you can see percentages of instant message use versus focus time. So all these things, I think this might be what they're about to show and bring. They showed this at Ignite, so it wouldn't be new, I guess, unless it's ready to go and they're going to launch it. There's also a corresponding set of personal insights, so let me just show you those as well. This is what I was talking about, commute reminders. So this kind of ready to leave for the day, close out your tasks. The idea is that it kind of changes your brain gets a chance to kind of de-stress and just kind of reset itself before you go. If you're like me, if you do a virtual commute, if you sort of walk out this door, go down the stairs and then you're home, then this really helps actually. So I'm kind of looking forward to this. But yeah, this might be what they're talking about. They might be talking about something completely different, but this is the stuff that I thought was interesting. Integration with Headspace, that was it. To do these guided sessions. So I don't know, we'll see. I remember, so I wrote this down at the time, so I guess that was the information we had at the time. Experiences coming in 2021, and with personal insights in Teams coming next month. So that was September. It hasn't really come yet, so this might be this because it might have slipped for a little bit. So we'll see. But where are we? But yeah, it'd be interesting to see. What it is, and so that's February the 4th. So at least I guess the next time we talk, we'll be able to talk through what it was, because I'm going to make sure I catch up on what happened, and we can talk about what it was and how wrong I was and how it was not that at all, and it was almost certainly what Mary Jo was talking about. But we'll see. It's fun to speculate. Anyway, I think that's it for me for today. I hope you had a good week. Next week for me is going to be busy, doing some really interesting things at the moment, having to learn some new skills and some new stuff, which is interesting. It's always good to keep learning stuff, dust off the brain power. It's kind of fun and interesting, and some things that I've been wanting to learn for a long time and just haven't had a chance to, so that's really good as well. And so it should be good. Nothing I can really blog or talk about, I don't think, but never mind. But I'm sure there'll be stuff happening anyway, and there's some things I want to blog about next week if I get the chance as well. So look out for those. And it'll soon be conference season again. Already, conferences have started up, announcing their dates and times and what they're doing. It'll be interesting to see. I think it's probably a given that we're going to start the conference season off virtually. And honestly, I have no idea whether or not we'll finish it virtually or whether we'll finish it in person. I think we're just going to have to wait and see at this point. Let's see how that goes. Anyway, whatever it is you're doing and whatever's left of this weekend, have a great one, and I will talk to you again next time.